So, Samson, how are you?
Good, Obi. How are you doing?
I'm very good. So, for everybody here, my name's Obi Nwosu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coinfloor, the UK's longest running Bitcoin exchange. And today, a very special guest on Coinscrum Meet the Founders is Samson Mow, founder of Infinite Fleet, the first massively multiplayer online strategy game to bring the power of crypto assets in on a massive scale. Hi, Samson. How are you?
Thanks, Obi. I'm doing great. It's great to be here on Meet the Founders.
So for the 1% maybe of people out there who don't know who you are, can you give us a little bit of a background on who Samson Mow, his journey, maybe even before crypto to now?
Sure. So my background is primarily game development. I've done some startups in the web space as well, but mainly doing games, real-time strategy games. I started out working on Dawn of War and Company of Heroes, and eventually I moved on to Ubisoft. I did some social games there. I did the Smurfs social game on Facebook, which had 10 million some odd users, and some Might and Magic titles as well.
So tell us a little bit about Infinite Fleet. This is your baby, but what is it? And to the layman who doesn't know.
Right. So Infinite Fleet is an MMO strategy title. So it's based off of a RTS-y concept. So in RTS, you have resourcing and combat, and we try to separate out that and make it an MMO. So you're in your downtime, you're resourcing, you're mining minerals and fabricating ship parts. And then in your combat time, you're fighting against other players, potentially hundreds of other players against the Aatrox. So you're commanding these fleets of ships in space, and building and fighting. And the theme of it is intergalactic warfare against this alien race. They've come to destroy humanity, and it's a very standard. It's a very standard trope, but we have a lot of twists in here that we'll reveal down the road. But you're building, customizing, and fighting.
So I mean, just showing my age, I remember things like Elite and obviously more modern Elite Dangerous. How would this compare to that or to those?
Right. So I guess it's more similar to EVE Online, except for in EVE you're piloting one ship, whereas here you're kind of like a fleet commander. So you have a number of ships and you buy them and build them up, upgrade them over time, customize them, and you can also send separate fleets of your collection of ships away on missions when you're not online too. So it's kind of like you can play the game when you're not playing the game, and you can engage and have this social dynamic, building up guilds and playing with other players. So it's more like EVE Online meets World of Warcraft.
Okay. But what made you have the idea for Infinite Fleet? What was the problem you're trying to solve? Where did it come from?
So the problem I'm trying to solve is I want a good game that I would play myself. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've watched every single Star Trek series and episode, and Star Wars is okay. I've gotten more into it with the Mandalorian, but traditionally,
in my name, you've got to be careful on the Star Wars critique.
That's true. But yeah, like I love sci-fi, and I wanted to bring a lot more hard sci-fi to games. I feel like a lot of sci-fi games are missing this element of hard sci-fi, and they just kind of gloss over and ignore a lot of the things that make it really interesting. The attention to detail, the minutia, how things work.
The physics.
Star Trek does, yeah, the physics. The science behind it, and we've spent a lot of time working on the science and trying to make it as realistic as possible, even though it is fantastic science fiction.
So tell us a bit, where are you at with Infinite Fleet? What's its current stage? Because I knew you were looking at going into alpha at the end of last year, so where are you now?
Yeah, so we're just about ready to push out alpha. Originally, it was scheduled for end of last year, as you mentioned, but we were coming up very close to the holidays, and we thought if we pushed it out now, people are just going to miss it because of Christmas and everything. So we decided to push it till end of January and add a little bit more polish to the game. I guess we took a lesson from Cyberpunk and decided to give it a bit more time before pushing it out there.
Now, what makes this different from EVE Online or World of Warcraft, amongst it being hard science, etc., is that it incorporates a security token. Can
Well,
you, pardon?
yeah, go ahead.
No, amongst many other things, but it incorporates a security token in the funding model. Can you tell us a little bit more about that side of things and how that works with respect to Infinite Fleet?
Yeah, so it's actually running on a dual token model. I don't know
Okay.
if any other projects are doing that. So there is a security token for the funding side,
Okay.
and there is a utility token in the game which replaces the game currency. And I think that is the biggest difference from traditional MMO titles, because their currencies are all locked up in the game and they're not freely movable. But with Infinite Fleet, you have the INF utility currency, which is akin to World of Warcraft Gold. So players can, it's a crypto asset on the Liquid network. Players can take it, put it into a hardware wallet. So we released the Jade wallet. You could potentially put that in a hardware wallet like Jade. You can create a multi-sig setup with your guildmates to pool together funds. You can move it to a crypto exchange potentially, but there's a world of possibility because it is now portable. And then on the fundraising side, it is a security token. It's called EXO, EXO. And this way we have a very clear separation between the utility side and the fundraising side.
Yeah.
As you know, a lot of scammy projects will try to say this is a utility token, but we're selling it ahead of time and use that to raise capital, and then they get slapped because it's a security surprise.
So there's a lot to unpick there. I mean, you probably know, but I also in the past I was part of a company that built a massive multiplayer game aimed at 16-year-old teenage girls, so it's very different. But it had many millions of users as well, and we had a currency, but it was trapped within that world, and users all the time wanted a way of being able to take it outside of that world, and you're effectively doing that. But can you give us a bit more of an understanding of why did you explained to a bit, but why did you decide to separate those two? I think that's a very interesting idea, to separate the security token from the in-game utility token.
Right. So, I mean, you could possibly do it like the traditional model, which is sell the utility token and saying you're prepaying for something ahead of time. But that hasn't worked for a lot of projects. And it puts you in this gray area where you're uncertain if the SEC is going to deem it as security or not. And I think with actions taken against companies like Ripple, it's kind of, it's a wrong path. And given that at Blockstream, we've been building this platform for issuing security tokens called Blockstream AMP, it made sense that we would dog food that and test it ourselves. So we just announced today, it was, we worked together with the British Institute for Standards to release
the BIS
paper. Yeah, BIS about standards for security tokens. So this is all very official tech and blessed by the BIS, and I think it's more robust as well compared to other networks out there that you could do security tokens on, because Liquid Network is primarily for financial transactions. So a lot of things, it's a lot to unpack, but a lot of things make a lot of sense. Because when you're doing a security token, you don't want the network to split or to suddenly explode, or the network itself is deemed a security. So this is why we chose to use Liquid. But the benefit also is that you can trade the security tokens with other investors in the project. So if you go on Stalker and you're investing on Stalker, then there is a whitelist that's built. And you yourself, if you invest it, you can do a peer-to-peer trade with another investor that's on that whitelist. And once there are security token exchanges out there, maybe you can talk about that, then you can trade these on the secondary market. So instead of getting a venture capitalist to invest and everything is illiquid and locked up, you can trade these security tokens freely after investing.
So tell me a little bit more about your business model. How does Infinite Fleet plan to make money and return value to its security token holders?
Right. So the security token, as you mentioned, it is a 20% profit share off of the profits. I'm taking cues from INX. So they're doing their security token in the US. I think they're doing 40%. So we're doing 20% share, but we also have equity, unlike INX. It's effectively equity because it's rights on liquidation or M&A or any kind of liquidity event. So the game itself will generate revenue primarily by selling ships. So as I mentioned, you're collecting these ships and customizing them. So you will buy these ships. Some of them will be lower tier and more accessible. Some of them will be free, but some of them will be very premium. So example would be a limited edition run of a certain generation of ships. And those will be, decked out with the best technology and they'll look really cool. And it's similar to other games that sell skins too. So like Fortnite or whatnot. So it's a very well accepted and traditional model of monetization in games. It's not pay to win, but you're buying something that's unique. And there's another way for us to generate revenue, which is taking fees on the auction house. So we're embracing the secondary market and we accept that there will be peer-to-peer trades. Like, as you know, players that play these games want to trade with other players. So we'll take a small cut of all the trades on the auction house too. So those two will funnel into the profits for EXO token holders.
And you mentioned obviously people collect ships and try to acquire better and better ships. Is there some sort of ability to provide customization and upgrades so you can have unique ships that are built maybe from parts of different ships to create new ships, which leads to therefore price discovery harder, or is it always produced by the Infinite Fleet team and they're acquired by the gainers?
So it's not so much like Legos where you're piecing together other ships, but when you buy the base ship, you can go down different tech trees and customize it in different ways. So it's sort of like World of Warcraft where you have talent trees. One tree might be offense, defense, and the other is auxiliary systems. And as you're playing, you can kind of upgrade in one direction or add different parts to it. It wouldn't be like you're taking like a thruster from one ship and sticking onto another, but you can choose different weapons to go down that path and upgrade that weapon to max potential. And you'll end up with like a level 99 ship that's really tailored to your play style and your taste. And if one day you don't want that, you could sell that entire ship to someone else and they're essentially paying you for your time with the INF currency. So INF is meant to grease this commerce, in-game commerce, and let the players trade time with one another.
So you've mentioned your current status. What's the roadmap? And I hate to stick to exact timelines personally, but I'm going to ask you to give us an indication. When can people expect to see this and the different stages to go live and infinite domination of the world?
Yeah, so we're giving probably priority to investors on Stalker. It's going to be a random draw to get access to the alpha. So we've had a number of signups already. We've had a number of signups on Stalker for investors as well. And once we're going live, we don't have the exact date yet. It depends on Sunny, the CTO, but it's going to be before February, and you'll get the ability to download the client and log in. And over the next year, we'll do monthly releases so that we can engage with the community, get feedback on the game mechanics, the economics, and roll out features gradually too. So, for example, the first release may not have multiple players playing at the same time for combat. It's just going to be single combat. But we'll release another update in a month. We'll wait for another few more months and then release the INF token and start to distribute that out gradually to the players, because that is paid out for social activities where they're collaborating together or working together to beat a mission.
So let's step back a bit, let's look at some of the technologies and the decisions you've made around that. So what is the technology you've used to power both your security token offering and also your in-game utility token offering? And why did you make that choice?
Right, so both of them are on Liquid. It's because I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer at Blockstream. So this is a lot of dogfooding. We're dogfooding Blockstream's tech, trying to find ways to commercialize it and use it in commercial applications. So the INF token is a utility token on the Liquid network. It's freely movable. It has confidentiality built in. It's a confidential asset. And the security token is on the Liquid network as well. But
Okay.
on top of the base level Liquid network, we have this thing called Blockstream AMP, which is a way to manage the tokens in Liquid. So a Liquid token is just a dumb token. It doesn't know anything. But AMP lets you build a whitelist, blacklist, transfer permissions, and a lot of additional conditions to kind of manage these assets. And that is what these security tokens are. You're trading with other investors in your region, and you can freely move that.
And so Liquid M, is that a form of smart contracting like functionality, or what is Liquid M?
So AMP is essentially a multi-sig. It's a 2 of 2 multi-sig. We built it off of the Blockstream Green wallet backend. So you're creating the criteria, the conditions for management of assets off-chain, and it's enforced through this multi-sig. So every Blockstream AMP transaction is actually a 2 of 2 multi-sig transaction. So instead of creating this smart contract where you're programming in JavaScript and inserting all the logic into this on-chain artifact, it's all done off-chain, and then we just sign off and say, okay, this transaction is approved. So you minimize the bloat of the blockchain this way.
Okay, that makes sense. So now I know you are Chief Strategy Officer for Blockstream, and you're dog fooding your own sidechain of Bitcoin. But what is your view of, and have you looked at other options at the time for providing these functionalities on for Infinite Fleet? And can you give me some insight into your views on the other systems out there and other options that are available?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really looked at that many, just because in passing, you can tell most of these projects don't work at scale. I think the best example is Ethereum. You know, the more people use Ethereum, the faster it dies, just because you can no longer perform these cheap transactions to compute, because they want to stick everything in the blockchain. So if you look at Liquid and even Blockstream AMP, the design methodology is very much to minimize use of the chain. So Liquid promotes purely financial transactions. You can transact stable coins, Liquid Bitcoin and whatnot. You're not stuffing things like CryptoKitties and smart contracts into there and bloating up the chain and bumping up the fees for everybody. And the security token side is just stability. Like Ethereum is trying to move from ETH1 to 2, and who knows what that's going to look like. And they generally change the economic policy and do hard forks on a whim. So I don't feel it's really reliable to issue a security on.
Okay. And you're aware I probably have similar views, so I might be slightly biased on this, but I have similar views in that respect. But let's bring it back to INF. You're creating an in-game currency, but it has potential infinite possibilities, because it can go outside of the system and be used in other places and transacted outside of Infinite Fleet. What is your vision for the in-game currency INF? And tell us a bit more about the economics of INF itself.
Right, so there is a limit on the number of INF that will be produced. It's still TBD. Our game designers and guys working on economies are still figuring out the right number. But at a higher level, the company issuing EXO token is called Exordium, and that is actually a game publisher. So when you're investing in Infinite Fleet, you're investing in Exordium, which is meant to publish a number of games, but Infinite Fleet is the first game. And we're using the capital raised to also license other games and potentially other IPs as well, and build games around those IPs. So the idea is that the INF token would be used in a number of these other games in a similar way, which is it's rewarded to players as they play the game for doing social activities. So it's not like you can kill a bear or something and get an INF token. It's meant to incentivize social collaborative activity. And the idea is that you can build this ecosystem where all these games are using this token, and potentially you could have a broader platform around that for distribution of titles, or even trading of titles if it is a bought title, like you buy Mario Kart and you can trade it with your friend for INF tokens. But the concept here is that we want to focus on one game first, much like Steam built up their platform, but they didn't go out and launch Steam first. They went and first did Counter-Strike and Half-Life and did successful titles. So very much the focus is on Infinite Fleet, getting that community, getting that player base. And from there, we hope to transition to something bigger and broader.
But is your vision for INF to be used across the across the range of games that you're going to be producing as a company over time? Or do you believe that it could be broader than that and it could become the currency for all forms of games beyond just your issued by your game publisher? What's your vision for it?
Well, the dream is it would become something that takes on a life of its own, and it could be used in games that are not connected to Exordium or Infinite Fleet or published by that group. But someone else might want to use this because it's a free-flowing digital asset that they find value in. So it could take on a life on its own potentially. But the starting point is to first grow it out here and see how it goes, because it is an experiment in some ways. You're not likely to see something like this come from the big publishers. So I used to work for the big publishers, and I know generally, they're quite happy in where they are, and they're not going to try something new, especially with a certain stigma behind crypto assets, right? Like Bitcoin is just starting to get mainstream institutional adoption, and that's taken quite a while. And for anything else, even if it's a token and it's you could even say it's like a rewards points token, like an airline token, but having that in crypto format, having that free flowing is a bit of a scary thing for these incumbents. And, if we're willing to do it and we have that background and expertise, then maybe we can disrupt them.
Well, I think Bitcoin has shown that traditional markets can be disrupted, and that's, I think, going to be the story of this decade. But what is your view in terms of not just the token, but MMO in general? What's your belief in, or what's your view of how it's going to change over the coming 5 to 10 years as a space? And will blockchain technologies, Bitcoin, be part of that?
Yeah, I think definitely this crypto asset blockchain component is going to have an impact, just because it'll promote being more open. Sort of like Bitcoin is the most free money. It will beat any other form of money. I think the freest game currency will also win too. So you could have a choice of playing EVE Online or World of Warcraft, and you're locked up into their ecosystem, or Fortnite. But you could play something else and have a more free-flowing currency. But I think the criticism I have of the game industry, not just MMO genre, but the game industry as a whole, is that they're not really innovating. The games haven't changed much in the past years. If you look at real-time strategy, which is our main background niche, that format hasn't changed. You release StarCraft, there's single player, and then there's multiplayer. But no one's actually tried to do something more. I think on a whole, the MMO genre has done a lot more in terms of moving out the line of what's normal. But still, like, the MMO genre has stagnated too. You spend a lot of time developing, you spend years in development, making all the quests, writing the story, and the players are just playing through your content. So that hasn't fundamentally changed in ever. And with Infinite Fleet, we're trying to do something new. In addition to the crypto asset component, we're trying to make it so that the players can write the story themselves. So being a very hardcore MMO gamer myself, I played Lineage like super hardcore for years. I took over a server and I had this massive alliance called Invincible. Like that, all that is lost to history. And I don't even think the game developer or publisher knew what was going on in the different servers, what the players were doing. And it's our hope that with Infinite Fleet, that will change. So we're paying attention to what the players are going to be doing, and we're writing their adventure and their story into the actual story of the game, so that you can eventually download a book, Infinite Fleet Year 1, and you'll see, oh, Obi was a commander in this game, and he did this thing, and he talked to this guy, and they had a fight, and he fought the Aatrox at this battle, and it was a very pivotal moment. But I think there's a lot more that can be offered in storytelling and in games than is currently being done.
Yeah, and I remember some of the games I would play, and when you recount it, although obviously my memory might be better than real life, it felt like this epic adventure, which could be its own movie, but no one else remembered it unless they were there at that time during that experience. So if that could
Yeah.
be memorialized forevermore, that would be incredibly powerful. But
Yeah.
same concept, but applied to, or the same question, but applied to the crypto markets in general. Let's just expand out, because your offering has a significant crypto side to it. What's your view for the state of the current crypto markets and tech at the moment, and where do you think we are? Where do you think we're going to over the coming 3 to 5 years, and what excites you beyond MMO?
Well, for Bitcoin, it's hyper-Bitcoinization, the point at which you don't need to go back to fiat and you just sit in Bitcoin and spend Bitcoin, and you have this circular economy where you get paid in Bitcoin, you spend Bitcoin, and your life is just denominated in Bitcoin. I think the bigger disruption that Infinite Fleet will bring is through that security token side for crypto markets, just because it is like on the precipice of this wave for security tokens, tokenized securities. And some people they're not that keen on the idea of STOs. I think it has a lot to do with the idea, or the fact that there's a word token in there, and it turns them off just because of all the shady stuff that's been done in the past. But STOs are just securities that are freely tradable amongst investors that are approved, and they can be traded on cryptocurrency exchanges that have the right licenses. So I foresee that there will be a lot more security token exchanges coming out this year. And we've seen a little bit of that on the periphery, INX being one of those. I think Bittrex is moving in that direction. They're definitely on that path. And I think there's just going to be more of that. And crypto exchanges are just superior to traditional exchanges in every single way. You have like, I forgot who did it, maybe Nick Carter. He calculated uptime for, somebody calculated uptime for traditional securities exchanges, and it's like 18% or 20%, just because it's like limited hours per day and 5 days a week and no holidays. And you can't compete with a crypto exchange, right? Like Coinfloor, you're running, I don't think you shut off.
24/7 for 7
Yeah,
years.
exactly. So that is the real competition. And having this instrument that is freely moving, like you can take your security token off, put it onto a Blockstream Jade, brackets in the future, and move that around. You can move it freely amongst different exchanges. You can't take your stock off one exchange and move it to another exchange that easily without going through some middleman. So I think there's a lot of ground to be broken here and a lot to be disrupted.
I think that's a very good way to finish up. Samson, tell us, where can everybody find out more about Infinite Fleet and about your token offering as well?
Sure. So Infinite Fleet, the website is infinitefleet.com. On Twitter, it's the same. I think Facebook is the same. And for me, my Twitter handle is Excellion, EXCELLION. And yeah, there's lots of information out there.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today on Coinscrum Meet the Founders, and we all wish you the very best of luck with your token launch. Thank you.
Thank you, Obi.